Friends, this class has specific importance for the researchers who are to follow, quantitative research methodology, or who are to continue research in the field of science or in the field of various subjects of science. Friends, we have discussed about the very concept of hypothesis. The meaning of hypothesis has also been discussed in detail. Thenceforth, we have discussed so much well about the steps which are to be followed for the construction or for framing hypotheses. Here in this class, we are to discuss today the importance of hypotheses in research. We have already come to know that in the field of scientific research, the basic concern of the researchers, the basic concerns are to make prediction. At the same time, in other fields where quantitative research methodology is basically followed, the researchers are to depend on the scientifically or systematically framed hypotheses or assumptions for going to the solution level of the studied problem. Let us discuss why hypotheses are very much important in the field of research. Friends, in scientific research, prediction, as I have already mentioned, has special importance. Prediction or saying about the future or the would-be result, as mentioned earlier, is one of the most important goals of scientific research or scientific inquiry or scientific study. In research, hypotheses are recognized very important to make predictions about the result of the studied problem. In experimental type of research, particularly in the field of psychology, prediction is regarded as one of the most important activities where important roles are played by the hypotheses or the assumptions or the guesses. In quantitative research, hypotheses lead the researcher towards the final conclusions in scientific way. Research, as you have understood so much well, research data are collected and such data are analyzed and interpreted according to the hypotheses that are or those are framed or those are well defined depending on the objectives or constructed depending on the objectives of such studies. The objectives are selected according to the nature of the problem, and at the time of selecting the objectives of a particular research problem, researchers are to depend on or they are to thoroughly study the available research literatures so that they can come to know in detail what the other researchers or how the other researchers, solve the problems which they undertook for their own study, and what were the approaches and what were the objectives they are to study. And thenceforth, by studying or analyzing or interpreting the research literature, the objectives are to be selected, and thenceforth the hypotheses are to be well defined or framed or constructed. The problem areas and the research problems are selected on the basis of knowledge that is gathered by the thorough analysis of research literature or previous studies, observations, and personal experiences of the researchers. Here not only the researcher is to depend on the available research literature, not only he or she is to depend on own observation, but he or she is to depend on own intuition as well as academic or intellectual experiences of life. Let us see the next. In the words of Mohana Kumar, facts are dependent upon a theoretical framework for their meaning. The next most important step is to ask questions which lead to scientific propositions or hypotheses or assumptions. A hypothesis thus states what we are looking for, what we try to solve, or what we try to study. Let us see the next. The building blocks of hypotheses are variables, that is, independent on dependent variables. On variable, we are to make discussion in detailed way so that your perception concerning to variables become much clearer. But here you see, simply to understand the importance of hypotheses, mention has to be made about the variables. So friends, the building blocks of hypotheses are the variables, that is, two variables, one is independent and the other is dependent. Hypotheses are if-then statements categorized in logical forms. A hypothesis is a statement that proposes a relationship between two or more variables. It is a tentative statement, or it is a supposition, or tentative statement, or assumption about how the researcher thinks the variables may be related to each other for going to the final stage of finding. Hypothesis says this way, friends, are the guidelines which help to proceed towards the ultimate goal of research. These are the tracks, these are the routes, these are the ways and means with the help of which we can go to the ultimate point of our finding or solution of our own study. Extension of knowledge in a particular area is possible depending on the hypothesis. Extension or expansion of knowledge also depend on the hypothesis. The tentative explanations of facts and phenomena are tested and verified with scientific process depending on the hypothesis, and the researchers basically go to the final stage of finding or reporting of the result. Hypotheses, these way dear participants, help the researchers to assess the findings of research activities beforehand. Means whenever you take or undertake a particular research problem, you certainly know the actual result of the problem. And it depends on your knowledge, it depends on your experience, it depends on your thorough study of the available research literatures. From the known point, hypotheses help the researcher to proceed towards the unknown point of knowledge, which is very much important, or which is the prime concern of every type of systematic study or research or systematic scientific inquiry. In research process, hypotheses remind the researchers the actual destination of research activities. Means where you are to go, how you are to go, what will be your ways and what will be your means. Everything you will come to know by studying or by framing or by constructing the hypotheses. Hypotheses work as the guiding force or principles of research activities. Researchers sum up their research activities according to the direction of the hypothesis in the form of finding. Hypotheses help the researchers to reach the stage of summarization of research result, which is very much important in all types of research activities. Data-based research activities are systematically completed depending on the hypothesis. But friends, when you see there is a great question to you which you are to get or which you are to solve yourself, is whenever there is no data available for the solution of your problem where you are to continue research, then what you will do? Many difficulties are being faced by the researchers. As for example, think about COVID-19. You see how the doctors or the medical scientists develop the vaccines, because people throughout the world didn't have any idea concerning to the very nature of the virus. And that's why they had to fight much for going to the final stage, whether the vaccine which are being made ready will help humanity or not, because they didn't get any available data, they didn't get any literature concerning to the very nature of the attack of COVID-19. So friends, for studying a new problem, researchers are to continuously go on experimenting, and by reporting or by recording all the results of such experiences before going to the final stage, and thenceforth various stages after the finalization or after the completion of the process of research, they are to try the result, first trial, second trial, third trial, which basically we have experienced, particularly whenever we see about the coming up of the vaccines of COVID-19. Hypotheses help the researchers to complete their research works without any complexities and puzzles and problems. Let us see the next. You see, so friends, this much relating to the significance of hypotheses. I thought there are other explanations. You do not need to know much about the specific significance of hypotheses in the field of scientific research as well as in the field of research when quantitative research methodology is being followed by you or any researcher in any part of the globe. Hypotheses basically help us, lead us, or help us to get the way to go to the solution part of our studied problem. And this is the main reason for which we are to study hypotheses, or the process of formulation of hypotheses or hypotheses so much well, so that at the time of framing hypotheses for our own research problem, we do not face any problem. So friends, this much for today, and then for the other things we are to discuss in coming classes, particularly for your help. We are to make discussion on the variables, particularly why variables are very much important in the field of research. You study all the contents, particularly you study the concept of hypothesis, thenceforth you study the spatial characteristics of hypotheses, thenceforth you study the ways or the processes with the help of which hypotheses are being framed, and thenceforth you study why hypotheses are important in the field of scientific study as well as in the field of research whenever the researchers are to follow quantitative research methodology. Thank you so much.